Good evening. I'm here to speak about a friend and someone who's just unforgettable. Let me start. Ever since last January, when we lost him, my mind has been stuck on George Neumayr. I keep being reminded of just how irreplaceable he's been and how impossible it is to come to terms with his sudden departure. He would no doubt tell me to give it a rest, remind me our existence in this world is temporary, hopefully by design, and I should always strive to see beyond myself. George was a full generation younger than me, and he loved to hear from me about the years when he was alive, about the years before he was alive. We were fellow Californians, and I often mentioned to him my growing up in Santa Barbara and attending its Catholic schools for 12 straight years, and the way religion was taught for at least the first 8 years of that string. I distinctly recall George expressing an envy of sorts that I had experienced the church when it still acted with confidence and self-assurance. Unlike the Jesuits he had come to chronicle, the Jesuits of Santa Barbara's Our Lady of Sorrows parish, many of them expelled from China, were naturally anti-communist and American patriots. How George wished that I could have recorded their priceless sermons. A tireless traveler, as we know, and widely read in California history, George drove up to Santa Barbara one time and later described his impressions to me in such a way that I felt he already knew more about my hometown than I did. In his many trips about the United States, he always knew where to stop along the way, at places that would broaden his knowledge and enhance his writing and reporting. In preparing for tonight, and overcoming my deep fear of revisiting George at his most alive, I began to reread his columns. One of them, based on his Biden biography of 2020, captured the vileness of Biden's politics that well predated the man's presidency. It was titled, quote, "Joe Biden, the father of borking." Even the Washington Post editorialized against Biden at the time. How I wish George was still with us to react to Biden's recent denunciations in Arizona of Trump and the MAGA movement, not to mention Hillary's new call for a formal deprogramming of MAGA world. George was a pioneer in MAGA studies, or more specifically, MAGA hats. George, who spent a lot of 2016 in New York City, conducted many on-the-street experiments sporting such a hat. Back then, no one yet threatened to give him the 1-2 for exercising his constitutional rights, even as he learned how appealing such hats were to average New Yorkers and even on occasion on Wall Street. In Montreal 3 years later, George's hat did attract some looks of disgust, but this being Canada, they were totally non-confrontational. The beauty of it was that George made clear in early 2016, much as he liked some of Trump's positions and understood his appeal and likability, he would be voting for Ted Cruz in the primary. George did not like to be praised, yet in death I think he would have enjoyed some of the comments our readers sent in. One began, quote, "Very sad news indeed. I always felt the passion Neumayr injected into his thoughtful articles. He was the very thorn the church needed to have in its side." Another wrote, "This is tragic. As an evangelical Protestant, I appreciated reading George's traditional Catholic perspective each Sunday that always hit the nail on the head regarding the problems with American churches, both Protestant and Catholic, and how they had been constantly subordinating the gospel of Christ to serve social and political agendas of the left that are at total variance with Christ's teachings and sound biblical doctrine. Yet his loss is a blow to all of us here, but at the same time, we know that he has been ushered into God's glory. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. In conclusion, these three observations from our readers. Quote, he was one of the world's best journalists and absolutely the best on the American Spectator. Another added, I will miss his persistence and clarity. And finally, the kind of courage he specialized in will be very hard to replace, here or elsewhere, because it was obviously more than a matter of journalism. Tonight, we honor George Neumayr with this sad year's Barbara Olson Award. Or I should say, he honors us in accepting it through two of his loving sisters, Mary Neumayr and Jane Nemtsova, representing George's beautiful family. Mary, Jane, please join me on stage. Mm-hmm. 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 Jane will have a few things to say, please.
So thank you on behalf of my brother George. Thank you, Bob, Letty, Mackenzie, Lenora, and the entire American Spectator team. On behalf of my entire family, we deeply appreciate this award. In times of crisis and duress, we see the generous spirit and touching kindness of others. We recognize the generosity of the American Spectator Award. The American Spectator has shown us how deeply important to our beloved country and its readers George was. He found a home here. He found a dear mentor, and he found an audience that misses him. George's voice cannot be replaced. However, he would be impatient that others continue his work. In a world where deep distress, globally, politically, and spiritually, is by all measures unprecedented, investigatory journalism is, without a doubt, turning into a narrower field. The American Spectator is a light in this landscape where the pursuit of truth is protected. In reflecting on such an award, it made me think about Alexis de Tocqueville, the author of one of my favorite books, Democracy in America. De Tocqueville was an astute observer of the potential of America, good and bad. He had profound observations about the elements that made America a unique experiment, destined for success, though not without risks. His observation about the important role of journalism in freedom and democracy should be revisited. George and I discussed at length de Tocqueville over the years. While he didn't always enjoy the translations of his work, he was amused at the presence of his views on journalists in America. And I'll quote from Alexis de Tocqueville, "It has been remarked that in times of great religious fervor, men sometimes change their religious opinions, whereas in times of general skepticism, everyone clings to his own persuasion. The same thing takes place in politics under the liberty of the press. In countries where all the theories of social science have been contested in their turn, the citizens who have adopted one of them stick to it, not so much because they are assured of its excellence, as because they are not convinced of the superiority of any other. In the present age, men are not very ready to die in defense of their opinions, but they are rarely inclined to change them, and there are fewer martyrs as well as fewer apostates. George was a concrete form of the healthy journalistic mind and soul that was conducive to the great American Republic, as de Tocqueville observed. As a linguist, sometimes I find that things are better said in another language. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose, which in French means the more things change, the more they stay the same. De Tocqueville's idea of an appropriate journalistic role as part of a free society has not fundamentally changed. George understood this, embodied it, and doubled down on the mission to speak truth as a journalist, reflecting as one of those rare investigative minds, found the knowledge, adopted its conviction, and endeavored to hold it up for the good of society, our country, and most importantly to him, the Catholic Church. Thank you, American Spectator, for your recognition of George's contributions to this aim, and for your support not only to him, but to your continued support of his fans and readers as a light in our path to freedom.